Every day, 17 veterans take their own lives.
The title, the career, or the rank became their identity.
That's more than the number of U.S. soldiers killed in Afghanistan in an entire year.
It could be maybe they're struggling with interviews.
Podmatch takes the stress out of booking and makes it effortless to find the right fit.
Prepare your mind and body for the battlefield of life.
Your pain isn't your enemy, it's your greatest weapon.
Who am I?
Every day, 17 veterans take their own lives. That's more than the number of U.S. soldiers killed in Afghanistan in an entire year. More veterans die by suicide than by combat. Let that sink in for a few minutes. We train warriors to survive war, but who's training them to survive peace? Today's guest, Derek Johnson, is a U.S. Army veteran who knows the battle firsthand. He believes your pain isn't your enemy, it's your greatest weapon. And he's on a mission to help people stop just surviving and start thriving. Derek, it's an honor to have you on the show. Welcome, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us on the SwagAbility Show.
I appreciate you having me, Steve. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Great. It's been good to get to know you. I got to ask, when you first left the Army, did it feel like the real battle was only beginning, or did that come years later after being out?
I would say it came years later, and more so from missing the camaraderie of the brotherhood and the sisterhood, and just knowing that I related more to some of my former soldiers than I did to others that I work with in business, companies, and you just miss going through, we would call it embracing the suck. Like we would go through tough times together and then celebrate and just trusting each other. And that was one of the most powerful things, that you and some of your brothers or sisters, you have different personal, religious, political beliefs, whatever the beliefs are. But at the end of the day, we have each other's six, we have each other's back. And so that bond, no matter where you are in the country or in the world, there's always somebody that is in that area, has been in the area, or has people there. So it definitely hit me, I would say 2 to 3 years after I got out, when I realized that I missed the camaraderie of that depth. Because in business, it's great. I love my clients. I'm happy with what I do. I'm fulfilled. Everything is going well. Everyone's doing well client wise, but there are days where sometimes you miss that camaraderie. And the best explanation that I could use for somebody that was not military is if they were an athlete. It's not identical, but it's very similar when it comes through spring training camp. You hated your teammate at one point, guys got in a fight, argued and all that, and then they win the championship, and then they become like family. So they push themselves through that. So if somebody has not played sports or served, then it's hard for them to understand the support that we have for each other,
Right.
and just that connection and that ultimate trust. So everything is out the door, beliefs, personal, professional. It's we have each other's back. When he needs you, I'm there. When I need him, he's there, vice versa. And the same thing with the female soldiers. So it hit me about 2 or 3 years afterwards, where I realized that I missed that camaraderie, especially in business and in South Florida. I love the state of Florida, but there's some cities in South Florida, it's kind of superficial. There's not really a connection. And I was just missing that authenticity and that honesty of some people.
Two questions kind of follow up on that. I've talked to other vets before, and it's go, 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 go for the most part, or at least on high alert, whether it's go time or not. There's that level of high alertness. When you get back onto the civic side of things, does time seem to stand still, or does it kind of carry on as normal as what it was? I'm just curious because I'm thinking those that get involved with, say, alcohol or drug use or things, is it because they went from such a quick, always on guard until I've got all this time on my hands? What's your take on that?
That's a great question. I would say that it's 50-50, and person one that gets out and that segues into civilian life, maybe they go into a career that was pretty similar with their expertise or with their passion, or they create their own passion project and they hit the ground running and they use that same momentum, that discipline, and they thrive in business for a company, with a company. And that's a certain percentage. Now, the other half, it could be maybe they're struggling with interviews because their resume doesn't necessarily match. They have the skill sets, the intelligence, and so forth, but let's just say that he was a gunny or a gunner or a sniper or something very specific that is related to military or government. It's hard to find anything that is similar besides private contract work, private security, something like that.
Mm.
And if they work for corporate, they feel disconnected. And sometimes they see that may look at them differently because they assume that all of us can't function, or all of us maybe have PTSD to some extent.
Mm.
And sometimes people are walking on eggshells and they're like, is he qualified? Is he mentally stable? Is she mentally stable? So there can be an array of things. So person one, they can pivot out and they find their passion project, or they get into a career because they've made connections with people and they use similar skill sets and they thrive really quickly. And then others, which is the majority, they may struggle trying to find a career that aligns with them, because at the end of the day, one of the most common things is that they made being a soldier, being an airman, a pilot, whatever branch they were in, their identity. And maybe they were unaware that they made it their identity, but they may have seen their father, like myself. My father was Army, my
Mm.
great uncle was a Marine. And so seeing men that grew up as farmers and then went military, the work ethic and discipline, it was just in my bloodline. And it was just normal for me to see that. And so as a child, I would wear Army boots. I'd dress up as Halloween and just be the soldier, or dress up like Rambo. So it was always the same, as in the man over here who did not come up from a military family and he was emulating Michael Jordan or other pro athletes, that if he became an athlete,
Mm.
got injured or retired, sometimes they go into dark depression as well, because they're like, well, I saw myself as a pro athlete, or I saw myself as a soldier. So sometimes unknowingly, the title, the career, or the rank became their identity.
Mm.
And so afterwards, that's when the shift can happen, where they're like, who am I? I'm misleading the soldiers. I miss being in the middle of nowhere eating these MREs and just laughing with people and just being totally open and honest with everybody. And now they feel like they're tiptoeing with what they can say in corporate. Now he's wearing a suit. He doesn't mind wearing a suit, but he just feels uncomfortable. And there's just a lot to it. But I would definitely say it depends on what route somebody took.
Yeah.
But most importantly is if they had the support system and the tools,
Mm.
because a huge issue is the disconnect of what steps do we take? Because unless we know somebody that works for a great company and we decide to work with them, then there's no fast path, and there's no packet like, thank you for your service. Here's some steps for you to have health insurance, life insurance, career, financial budgeting. Like, there's really nothing. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, turn in your gear. Thanks. And
You said,
that's about it.
yeah. Uh, you said self-identify, like taking on who they were, whatever, and not having it. I don't know if it's too personal or not, but uh, Derek Johnson, who's his identity?
Great question. His identity is having a broken childhood and knowing that he has strong faith. He realizes that he's just a vessel to help other people get connected with themselves, which gets them closer to God. So no matter what pain, trauma, anxiety, depression, or maybe even having potential suicidal thoughts, guiding them back to the light, back to get reconnected with themselves, so then they can live out their purpose, which always ties back to helping other people. So I feel like that's
Mm.
his mission and his identity, where it's not the title, it's not the money, it's not the other things. It's just he knows what it feels like for family to not care, being in a room full of people, nobody cares to listen, being the quiet kid, being bullied and beat up by family and at school, and just questioning yourself. Am I not enough of this? Am I too much of that? Who am I? And why do bad things happen to good people? Does God even listen? What's the point of prayer? So all these phases, getting through those and then seeing the light and saying, you know what? I'm here for a reason.
Derek
Running
found
off
that
of
light.
the,
Derek found that light.
yes, 100%.
Amen. Uh, you mentioned pain, and I think that's going to resonate with maybe not just your followers, but a number of my followers. Uh, you also mentioned passion project. Before I get to pain, um, you wrote a book. At what point did you start to pen this book, and can you give us the Coles Nosed version of why someone's got to go pick that up?
For sure. I've always had a vision of writing a book, and I felt that I needed more experience as a coach and as a man before I would write a self help book. So, one of my favorite books ever is Outwitting the Devil by
Yeah,
Napoleon
read
Hill.
it.
Many of your listeners, they've read Think and Grow Rich, but there's a lot of people that they're not familiar with Outwitting the Devil. Me personally,
That's
that
deep.
is my favorite book. And I just love, oh, yeah, I just love the perspectives of the book. And so, the writing process was always, I wanted it to feel like a
Mm,
coaching session. Nothing against anybody else's writing style, but I didn't want to overwhelm someone. So let's just say example, if somebody reads or watches Jordan Peterson, some of my friends or clients, he overwhelms them because they're not grasping it all. Not that
yeah.
they're not intelligent, but it's just too much at once. And same thing with other writers. They're great at what they do. I support them. I have a lot of their books, but I wanted to simplify high level and deep topics so anybody could relate to it. So the book is called Mission Ready: Prepare Your Mind and Body for the Battlefield of Life. And it's a self help book where somebody could use it as a resource if they're struggling with physical health, if they're struggling with their faith, they want to holistically and naturally overcome traumas. It's a toolkit. And at the end of every chapter, they have prompts and action items that they could take that they can use in real life. So it's not necessarily a motivational book rah, rah, rah. That sounds great. But when it's 6 a.m., we don't want to wake up. We're questioning things. What can we use? So they can use that as a toolkit for those moments where they're struggling.
Yeah, pain and struggling. Um, you've said before that pain can become fuel. How do we actually turn our lowest moments into momentum, if we can put it that way?
Great question. Number one that helped me when I was younger was to see people that inspire or motivate me and see commonalities in their journey. So let's say an individual reads a biography, autobiography, reads a documentary, reads the Bible, whatever stands out for them in that zone that they're in, and to see commonalities to say, how can I relate to him? How do I relate to her? And then they start to see that every single one of them have gone through dark times, have questioned themselves, have lost their faith, but somehow got it back and still won in their career or in their industry. So sometimes just seeing other people's journey gets us outside of ourselves. So we don't just think, I'm misunderstood. Nobody understands me. Nobody's ever been here. Because then that can maximize all the emotions. It can heighten and deepen depression and anxiety and so forth. So I would recommend people to see it in an interesting way where they watch interviews, read books and content and information of people that motivate them, whether it's a musician, pro athlete, or a religious figure, and just learn about their backstory and then find commonalities. And they begin to see that, you know what, that was part of his comeback story. This was part of her comeback story. What is part of mine? And then they can look and assess their current or their past situation or traumas to say, what did I get from this? So I'll use myself as an example. Being the quiet kid, my mother's German, my father's African American. I always didn't really know, should I act this way? Should I act that way? I'm half this, I'm half that. And I didn't really know who I was and I didn't really fit in. And then one day I woke up and said, why do I care to fit in? My lunch table was always random kids and random teens, but we related because we all went through wild stuff. And I realized, I was like, we don't fit in a clique. We're all our own person. And this makes us unique. The thing we have in common is pain. So I always related to people that were deeper because they were going through pain, opposed to somebody just acting like they're perfect or trying to fit in. And I would find commonalities in them as well, where you would realize that, you know what, I'm not alone. So looking outside of ourselves, connecting the dots to see how people overcome things. And then in that moment, you start to see and ignite your faith as well, where you say, because this happened to me is why I'm a better listener, because I know what it feels like for people to not listen or even really care. And I truly believe that what you were missing as a child or teen, we tend to give to others. And there's a fine line when people can overdo it, but just to see that gift, the gift could be discernment. The gift could be making people feel comfortable and safe. The gift could just be making people's inner child feel heard and understood. Because at the end of the day, all of us have an inner child, and those are the two things that they want. We want to be heard and understood. And so those perspective shifts can help somebody a lot to see, okay, yes, I went through this, but I have the ability to make a decision. Will I continue to be a victim of this circumstance, or will I come out victorious? Victim or victorious? We have the option.
Mm. You've coached, I think, well over 500 people and organizations and individuals we probably don't know about. In your time as a life coach, what would be one of the number one destructive patterns that you see are holding people back from thriving, that you're trying to get people to thrive? Our whole mission of SwagAbility is to have people thrive where life finds them. What's, one or two of the most destructive patterns that you see holding people back from achieving that thriving life?
I would say the main two are lack of presence. And then what I mean by that is they're stuck in the past mistakes, past failures, past depression, anything that they've gone through, or they're stressed about the future. So they're not present because they're stressed about the past, or they're stressed about the what if scenarios of what could go wrong in the future. And so when they're with their loved ones, mentally they're somewhere else, but physically they're here. But they're either worried right now about finances, bills, health, or thinking about something of the past, or creating scenarios. If this happens, then what if that happens? And that's definitely not going to happen. What if this? And then they start to stack fake
Yeah.
scenarios, quote unquote. So presence is number one. Number two, it ties right into it, is attention. Not just attention span, but it's very common nowadays for us to all to get distracted. We have phones, iPads, notifications. Everybody has more than 5 apps, and our attention is everywhere. So the individual who can't or who does not have control of their attention and who's either always living for future stress or past stress, they're going to be easily controlled and manipulated, whether that's spiritual attacks, whether that's being around narcissists, whether they're too nice and people take their kindness for weakness, but it can open up patterns that could lead to the second one. Number two is attention. It's really common nowadays for people to not have control of their attention, not just attention span and time duration, but they get distracted too easily by these apps, the media, notifications, trending topics. And so going back to number one, they're either living from stress of the past or stress of the future,
Mm.
and they don't have control of their attention. So that leads them more open to being attacked spiritually, being controlled by narcissists that may be in their family, maybe a coworker, maybe somebody they live with.
Mm.
And they may not realize it until later or until it's too late that they lost a lot. So those are the two biggest ones that I've noticed where we are in 2025 is living in the past, stress about the future. So lack of presence, number one. And number two, lack of control of their attention. Because right now, everything and everyone wants our attention. But when we don't have control of what we give it to, we're just feeding our mind maybe the wrong things, but in some cases, the right things.
Wow.
But those are the two biggest things I've seen that trickle off other issues or leading to potential vices.
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah. Um, right along with that, with breaking old patterns and things like that, who do you think struggles most with breaking old patterns? Leaders, entrepreneurs, veterans, or everyday people in your in your with you've coached so many and seen so many. Is there one particular group that struggles the greatest with breaking old patterns? Or maybe it's a personality trait as opposed to leader, entrepreneur, veteran, or everyday people. What's your take on that?
Great question. So I would say it's everyday people, but I would say the people that plow through it and get results faster are people that, yes, they were military or they were athletes or they're in business slash sales and leadership. And the reason why, they've always been driven knowing people depend on them.
Mm.
In that category could also be parents, because they know their kids, their family, their legacy depends on them. So they're more likely to take action faster or really look within to do that work to then get the progress or results that they want, because they're thinking of others, not just necessarily about themselves or what's currently happening. But when it comes to people that may not have family, did not really play sports, weren't military or in business or sales, and they were just part of a team, which there's nothing wrong with that, I noticed that they just take more time. They still overcome it, they still can, but it take more time because they just didn't grow up naturally having that competitive edge for sports and competition. So people that did play sports and are very competitive in the past and in their career, they can plow through things a little bit quicker at first because it's already in their nature. And with
Yeah.
person two, that group, they just have to have that new quote unquote default setting of getting things done faster to then just see trust in themselves, because the subconscious mind just needs proof. Hey, you know what? I've been consistent for 2 weeks with workouts. She's been consistent making calls for networking events. And once we start building that momentum and stacking wins, then that self belief goes up. And that's when things get interesting. But until then, the self doubt creeps in. I don't know if I can do this. And that little negative voice starts to maximize. But we just keep it simple to say, let's just stack small wins, because all progress is equal. It's just a compound effect. It's all going to add up.
It's good. Real good. Friends, today's episode is brought to you by Podmatch. Podmatch is the platform that connects podcast hosts with their ideal guests automatically. Whether you're a host searching for a compelling story or a guest eager to share your message, Podmatch takes the stress out of booking and makes it effortless to find the right fit. Founded by Alex Sanfilippo and his wife, Podmatch is built to help you grow your audience, your brand, and your impact. You're interested in joining Podmatch, you can go to the website joinpodmatch.com/swagability. That's joinpodmatch.com/swagability to get started today. Derek, we were talking about having a mindset and breaking patterns and things. I want to talk about having a mindset and resilience. Um, you talk about building unshakable confidence. What does that actually look like in your everyday life or in someone that's successful through your coaching? What does unshakable confidence look like when it's walked out in everyday life?
Great question. So, to keep it simple, is the person that stops letting themselves down. I know it sounds so straightforward,
Mm,
but they've made a non negotiable so strong and the foundation of who they are. It could be an example of their morning routine. Let's say Jimmy, he never misses his morning prayer or his morning workout. He doesn't care if he's sick. If he can't physically do everything, then he may do just 5 to 10 minutes of what he can, even if it's stretching. But he doesn't miss the workout or his prayer if that's part of the morning routine. So making those non negotiables totally non negotiable, where that becomes their identity, as in they can be traveling in different time zones, but they're not going to miss their morning routine. So going back to the person that made a decision to no longer let themselves down, because usually we've all been there, myself included. We miss something, 2 days turn into 2 weeks, turn into, I don't know if I should do this, then we lose momentum.
mm,
But it always stems back from what we didn't give ourselves fully.
mm,
And then that's when our people can feel it. So that individual, they've just repetitively become that person who just keeps their word to themselves. And then people feel that energy. Because when I doubt myself, when you doubt when anybody doubts themselves, no matter how confident we are, somebody still can feel it, and they may doubt in our vision, in our ideas. But when we show up with that power, that faith, that intensity, and they're just like, wow, she's a woman on a mission, he's a man on a mission. You can feel their energy, you see it in their eyes.
mm,
And the commonality is they've just consistently showed up for themselves, where they're not faking it. It's not the espresso shot, it's not the caffeine, it's not breath work and everything else. It is who they are, their foundation. And I truly believe that that is the only way to build and cultivate that confidence that is unshakable. So no matter what's happening in the world, they're still going to show up for themselves first and then lead others.
Is confidence something you can practice, or is it a mindset shift?
It's a combination of both. Great question. So the practice would be the everyday things that you can do to cultivate that confidence to make yourself better, which leads to the mindset shift. So I think it's action first, then thoughts follow. Because a majority of people, they think first and then take action, but the action usually lacks. Because sometimes we might think thoughts on top of thoughts and think ourselves out of doing something.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's not something we build in a day. It's forged in the fire of repeated challenges. Yeah. Many people find um, that when they struggle mentally, uh, they put on a facade. Everything looks fine on the outside. Why do so many people feel stuck, and how do they break that cycle where you can put on everything's altogether good? We all wore that face, I'm sure, but uh, yet they're so stuck. And there might be a listener right now who's could be answering honestly to themselves. That's me. Um, how do people get so stuck and feel so stuck? How do they break that cycle of being stuck yet putting on a facade that everything's okay?
Great question. Number one would be to give themselves some grace. Give yourself some grace. And the reason why is that what you're going through is normal because there's many people that have experienced that and we're not undermining our stress, emotions, or our current situation, but is also that it takes true power to speak about things. So it's very common for people to think vulnerability, especially as men, I don't want to be vulnerable. Some men in someone's family could be telling them to keep their pain to themselves and their stress. So that became their norm. And when they're really struggling, they may think that if I open up, that shows weakness. Vulnerable equals weakness, which is not true at all. Vulnerable equals power because there's a total difference between somebody speaking their truth and what's happening or about their past and venting. That's important. Then complaining, there's a huge difference. But if somebody opens up to their friend, somebody in a church, whether it's talking to God, psychologist, therapist, whoever they're comfortable with, that takes power in itself. So I always acknowledge and applaud people that have the ability to message somebody, email, call, reach out, or have verbal conversations in person, because that first step, that takes more power and willpower than anything. So just acknowledge the person that already has filled out a form to see their first therapist. Plan to go to church this Sunday for the first time in 7 years. Whatever you plan to do, you're doing better than you think you are because that takes power more than the rest of your path of personal development. Tip number two, I challenge you to grab a sheet of paper today and at the top, write the word eliminate. Eliminate. And think of things by asking yourself the question, what do I need to eliminate that would help me make more progress? What do I need to eliminate that would help me make more progress? And I suggest you first start with what you eat and drink. So for, let's say, Michelle, she says, you know what? I need to have less sugar, less processed foods, less caffeine, because that usually trickles into my nights and I'm craving everything. Okay. What about with what you eat? She can write down those. So start with consumption, food and drinks. If there's not much on the list for you, go to the next level. Mental. How do you speak to yourself? Do you constantly beat yourself up? Because it's very common for people to verbally and digitally be very nice and supportive to everyone else, but in their head, they're their worst enemy. If we heard your thoughts, would we want to be your friend? If we could hear your thoughts to yourself, would we want to be your friend? It's just a perspective shift to not or make a decision to no longer speak to yourself in a negative way. So writing down those things, if it's food, if it's drinks, if it's self-talk, procrastination, whatever it is. And then from there, reading through your list is saying what holds the most weight. So, one, you're going to get clarity and honesty writing it down. That takes power. Two, prioritize what holds the most weight and then focus on that one first. This doesn't mean their stress is going to disappear, but it gives them power and control because they can pinpoint
You
what it
men-
is.
yeah, sorry, I cut you off. You mentioned that faith a couple times in our way through this interview. If you're comfortable, what does your faith mean to you? Where does it rank? And yeah, I'm curious. You've mentioned it a couple times, so if you don't mind me prodding, what is your faith, and is it paramount in your life?
Yes, it's huge in my life. I believe in God and Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian. And I will say, up until the age of 14, I was a non believer. More so because I was that angry
Mm.
kid, that angry teenager, because of what was happening within family. Alcoholism and drugs run in my family. And I would always ask the question, why do bad things happen to good people? I was the kid in the teen that asked too many questions in church, too many questions in class. And I was just trying to get the answers of everything. But I didn't realize that years later, I was just running off of brokenness. I thought it was anger, but it was more so brokenness, wanting to be heard, wanting to be understood, because I was disconnected from people. And that made me, quote unquote, shun God, where I was like, He's not listening. Why did this happen to my mother? The reason she drinks is because he allowed this, and she does stuff to me, my dad, and all this stuff. And I was just angry because I was like, if you're so almighty, why do you allow this to happen? From 14 to 15, it shifted because I realized that in school, people would come up to me, even teachers, and just open up. Same thing in public. I'd be waiting on the bus or just walking to a store with my mom, and just people of all ages would just open up to me. And at first I was overwhelmed because I'm between 15 and 16 years old. I'm like, why does everybody, at first the teenagers, like, why does everybody tell me their problems? And then after a while, I was like, no, let me push my ego out of the way and say, I think there's something here. And so I went from the quiet kid to the sports leader or the team leader. And if we did group projects in school, and I always enjoyed lifting people up and empowering them, because people would ask her, like, you used to be so skinny, you used to be so insecure, you were so quiet, now you public speak, now you're in better shape, now you just walk with your head up, because you used to be tucked and just be nervous and scared all the time. What was the shift? And I would love showing people what I did or what they can do to feel that level of confidence as well. So it definitely came from what I did not have, and just the emotions and anger and confusion, to then on the positive side, on the light, seeing all of that happen for a reason, which is why I can connect with strangers more
Mm.
than usually family.
That's a
And
God-given gift. Yeah.
to the listener, exactly. And to the listener, if you don't feel heard by your family or friends, I just challenge you to remember that there's a light in your darkness and there's a gift in your pain. And it's usually going to be felt more by strangers than the
Yeah.
people that already know you. Now, I don't mean to cut off your family or cut off who you know, but they remember a past version of you. So sometimes it's difficult for them to accept your current version. Meaning, let's say life is a video game, and right now on personal development or success, you're on level 7, and they remember you at level 3, and they still talk to you in that way, but you've grown and evolved. You're healthier, you're happier, you're focused, you're in a loving relationship, you're financially better off. And sometimes if they haven't done personal development themselves, they'll still speak to you like you're a past version. So you don't have to hate them for it, and just see it's all relating back to their self-work or lack thereof. And just know that there is a disconnect. It doesn't mean you're holier than thou or better. It's just, you just have to
You
accept you've
mentioned
grown.
grace a few minutes ago, but to that person that feels trapped uh, and listening now, um, what's one of the first, just a small action someone can take when they feel trapped towards getting to that light, getting to that victory, uh, getting to understanding their faith and their purpose in that? I mean, what's the small action that that listener you're talking to right now can take?
I challenge you to feel the feels. meaning allow yourself to feel the emotion of what you're feeling. If it's anger, allow yourself to sit in it for a couple minutes. If it's sadness, allow yourself to cry. I would rather you cry or yell or pray than pick up the bottle, pick up something else, or do anything else that's detrimental. Because it's so common in those moments. I don't want to feel this, escape. I don't want to feel this, run. I don't want to feel this, mask. I don't want to feel this, suppress, push it deeper and further down. So I challenge you to flip it and sit with it for a few moments. And in psychology, there's a saying that goes, be where your feet are, be where your feet are, meaning wherever you are, just be present for a few minutes and just allow yourself to feel it. Because usually we're running from that emotion, we're ignoring it, suppressing it, or masking it. And then it just keeps
Yeah,
building.
that works well. Because you've talked to people and coached people and who face some like serious trauma in their life. What's one of the biggest misconceptions about just getting over it? Um,
Knowing that there are stages and also making sure that you don't make it an identity. And what I mean by that is that it's common for people to say, I'm in my healing journey, I'm in my self development journey, or I'm in my recovery stage. And words like healing, recovery, they start to use those words so much that they realize that, okay, I'm heard and understood now, but then they ride with it, meaning they actually keep themselves in a box. So they only go so far on their healing journey, on their faith journey, because it almost becomes a title or like a badge of honor where they don't realize that they're not making the progress that they truly want. But their inner child's like, this is getting me positive attention and support. This is exciting. And they're like, I haven't felt this in a while. And what if I do get better? I heard success means you're going to be lonely. I have a fear of becoming better because then I may make them feel uncomfortable or disconnected. So I just challenge a person to say, yes, I will heal. Yes, I will overcome, but do not make that your identity by saying it too much and just focus on the day that you're in. Because truly, there's only two things that matter: if you become a better person today and how you can help somebody else. Yesterday passed, tomorrow's not important right now. It's the present day. So when your head hits the pillow, the couch, however you sleep, can you honestly answer the question by saying yes to this question? Did I become better today and am I proud of who I am? Just focus on those
yes.
24 hours. If we could say yes more often, we're building momentum, and then that leads to us just being proud of ourselves. But that's a huge misconception sometimes, is people give themselves this fake timeline of, it's going to be hard, it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take 3 years, it's going to take forever. You'd be surprised what can happen when you stop worrying about time, show up by doing your part, have strong faith, and miracles can happen. That's one of my favorite things to see, just the shift in the person's face, their body language. I'm like, oh, I saw it. I'm not going to say anything yet, but I saw something click. And then they'll bring it up days later, hours later. They're
Mm.
like, hey, guess what? I didn't have a nightmare last night, or it's been 2 weeks since I picked up a cigarette, or guess what? And then I'm just excited about that.
Sounds like another book I've read. Says, you know, don't worry about tomorrow, for today is sufficient for itself. God's already taken care of those birds that, that need to be fed, and taking care of the past. So focus on today because it's all you really have. So that's great advice. I want to drill down a little bit more about this whole thing about turning pain into fuel. Can you share a story from your own life where pain became your greatest weapon?
Definitely. I would say the first time that I thought that I was losing my mother, I was 17 or 18 years old. And just want to preface, alcoholism runs on both sides of my family. And at that point, she had diabetes and she passed out. So my mother's German, and a lot of her family's in Germany, and she went through her own really crazy childhood, teenage years, some of the worst that I know of stories. And alcohol became positive entertainment, meaning she was always the life of the party. But after the cookout, after the phone call, after the function, something else would take her over from the past. So it was one of those nights. Things were happening. She was just releasing whatever was happening from the past, and then she passed out. When she passed out, she hit her head on the tile floor in our living room, and in that moment, I was trying to help her up. And then I realized that
How old?
I was
How old were you?
17 or
Sorry.
18. This was right before I graduated
Okay.
high
Yeah.
school. No
Gotcha.
worries.
Sorry about that. Keep going.
And so the scenario, living room, tile floor, my mother's passed out, and I try to help her and I get a pack of ice. And next thing I know, I realize that she's more than passed out and she has no pulse. So then I started giving my own mother CPR, compressions, doing everything that I knew from Army ROTC and just clubs and programs that I was part of. And I did everything that I could, and there was still no pulse. So then my father, he was also drinking that night, and he was like, "You caused this. We were arguing, and she screamed too loud and passed out." And I don't even remember what the argument was about. And then I'm trying to help, and then I call 911, and I speak really calmly because I'm calm in stressful situations. I say, "My mother needs help. This and this happened." I explain the scenario. And then before I was able to hang up, my dad is yelling in the background. And so, because they heard yelling, they then sent police force as well. And so, we lived in a nice, predominant home and neighborhood. So, my mother's passed out. I'm the son just wanting help for my mother. And an ambulance pulls up, a fire truck, and 3 cop cars in this neighborhood. And everybody, all the neighbors come out wondering what's happening. I'm like, this is embarrassing. This is literally just me trying to make sure my mom is okay. I think my mom passed away. Long story short, everybody shows up and one of the cops says, "Hey, your dad said this is your fault. Get out of the house." So I'm scared. I'm thinking, do they think I put my hands on my mother? She has diabetes. She was drunk. She was screaming. She passed out. That's all that happened. Then she hit her head on the tile floor. And the cop is like, "Hey, are you sure you didn't touch your mother?" I stayed as calm as I could. I said, "No, sir. I'm the one that called. Here's what happened." And he realized how calm and honest I was. And he said, "All right, well, I need you to stay out of the house." So as I'm waiting and pacing, I'm calling one of my friends to let them know what's happening. And next thing I know, EMS is coming up to the door. Excuse me, the EMTs are coming up to the door to tell me that my mother passed away. And out of nowhere, as the lady's coming up, we hear my mom coughing. So out of nowhere, she just starts coughing and she was flatlined because she said, "I did electric shock on her 2 or 3 times. We did everything we could, IV, everything else that they attempted, nothing worked." So they were coming up to my dad and I to tell us the bad news. And out of nowhere, she started coughing.
Wow.
And so in that moment, I then pushed them out of the way. I'm like, "This is my mother." So I go up, I hug her. In that moment, she's sitting on the couch, still has an IV in her arm. And she starts yelling at me again because she's still blackout drunk, but at least I knew she was alive. So at that point, I was just like, I don't even care if she's yelling, she's alive. And then I got out of the house and
Yeah.
I said, "This was a crazy scenario. She's screaming like it's my fault, drunk, but she didn't realize that I'm not saying that I necessarily saved her life physically, but there's a blessing in God." And so moments like that just solidified to say, you know what? Having years of these kind of nights and these kind of experiences and others that were worse made me so calm under pressure. And because I was able to be calm, I did not escalate any scenarios, whether that was with the EMTs, with the cops, with my dad, or anything else. And I just realized that there was a gift here. So fast forwarding to when I was in boot camp, there's a week, which is week 1 of Army boot camp. It's called Shark Week. All of the drill sergeants are in your face yelling, and most people get stressed out. They're nervous. They're like playing a game with you. It took everything in me not to bust out laughing. The reason why is because my home life was way more chaotic than boot camp. And so in the moment it clicked. And internally I said, "Thank you, mom. Thank you, dad. You guys made this a walk in the park." And so instantly the drill sergeant chose me as a leader and like I just performed well. And it was because of the environment. So dark times as a child, as a teenager, to then becoming better, calmness in the storm, calmness in chaos, which then led to a powerful career of people being calm because the leader was calm in stressful environments. And I realized that there was something there. So looking back in hindsight, one of my favorite quotes by Tony Robbins is, "Life is always happening for you, not to you." So that always stood out with me. And the last quote from Tony is, "If my mother gave me the love I wanted as a child, I would not be the man I am today." If my mother gave me the love I wanted as a child, I would not be the man I am today. When I first heard that, I got chills and tears, and I relate to that saying by Tony so much. So those two things definitely gave me a perspective shift along with other scenarios. But going to your listener is, if you've experienced anything similar or maybe even way worse, what did you get from this? I guarantee you there's some gift, skill set, faith, or some clarity, something just connected. And you're like, wow, this makes sense. And that gave you your power back.
Yeah, just a couple more. This has been really good. Um, you've coached a lot of leaders and organizations, and I guess there's two questions I'm really curious about. In all those leaders and all those organizations and things, what destructive patterns do you see most often that comes with success and um, people that end up with vices and things like that? Yeah. What destructive patterns lead to that, do you find?
I would definitely say a lack of faith, which leads to greed. And greed does not always have to be success and money or material things. Greed could be power. Greed could be attention. Greed could be playing that person or having a persona, playing that alter ego, getting the external validation. So, a huge one when somebody hits a certain level of success, if they don't have strong faith and a foundation, they will have greed. And that will then lead to them realizing they're not fulfilled, which can lead to a really dark place of vices, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever other addictions it may be. And it is a huge reason why people from the outside who have the family, the car, the money, the home, the trust fund, the will, and family set for generations. And why does he jump off the top of a building that he owns? Why does she do this and hurt herself or others? It always stems back to lack of faith. So if we don't have faith, we will always feel empty and we will do everything we can to try to fill that void. More money, more attention, more this, more that. And we realize it's never enough. More drugs, more drinks, more this. Nothing will ever suffice it like our faith will. And the second one
Yeah.
is going to be to make sure that we're fulfilled. And the only way that we can be fulfilled is by helping others. That could be just volunteer. It doesn't have to be business, coaching, career, anything like that. It's helping others. So faith in helping others, that's the foundation to happiness because it always stems from the inside rather than external things. But those are two huge things that I see when people hit a certain level of success. If they don't have faith and they are not fulfilled, they'll potentially go to a dark place.
What role does community, I mean, you just mentioned it there, but what role does community or mentorship play in breaking some of these patterns that we've been talking about?
Making the individual think outside of the box where they're out of their zone, meaning everything is a pattern. So if they got to success, if they got to an addiction with these patterns, a mentor, a coach, a community will help them to pause real quick and think of different perspectives. And they start to get clarity where they don't feel judged, they feel heard and understood, and they feel like somebody's there to listen, to understand. Because it's very common for us to be around people. They listen to interrupt, they listen to talk, they don't listen to understand us. And then internally, we're like, well, why should I open up anyway? Because nobody cares, nobody listens, and that can start another rabbit hole. But the community can help them to have that support and also make them think outside of the box because then they may learn from the others or they may teach someone else. And it's a win win for both when we're just open and honest. And going back to what we talked about earlier of vulnerability, when we have that community, a coach or mentor, we realize that the most powerful, life changing conversations only happen because of vulnerability, which always takes power. That's true strength. Because if we're always holding it in as men, as women, as leaders, it's just going to make us weaker and it's going to be a detriment to our health, physical, mental, and everyone around us is going to feel it. So definitely having that support system and knowing that we can have different perspectives and also being vulnerable and realizing the fear disappears because vulnerability is the only reason that we relate to
I've got
anyone.
4 rapid fire questions I want to ask you as we close up our interview today. You ready for these? All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's one belief you had to kill to become who you are today?
I don't need anyone. I can always figure it out by myself. That's one I had to get rid of. I don't need anyone. I can always figure it out by myself. That was that angry, inner broken teenager in me.
If someone's listening and is at rock bottom, what's the first mission ready action they should take?
The best thing about rock bottom is that there's nowhere to go from here but up. There's nowhere to go from here but up. And you will become a fighting force because that power will turn into your fuel. And think about what it's going to feel like to tell your story to someone else. Someone needs to know your journey. Someone needs to know your testimony. And that journey, that story is going to help somebody else. Even if right now you don't think anybody should look up to you, I guarantee you somebody does. The kid down the street, your niece, your nephew, your kids, somebody on the internet that sees your posts, somebody's watching. Somebody's watching, and you could change somebody's life sharing your story wherever you are right now.
Yeah, that's good. What's one unpopular truth? Let me rephrase that. What's one unpopular truth about self-improvement that you're not afraid to say out loud?
True confidence can only be earned. It cannot be bought. You cannot drink something for it. You cannot take medicine, pop a pill for it. True confidence has to be earned. I can tell myself I love me as much as I want, but if I don't take care of me, confidence will never be real. It's true with me and every human in existence. Confidence has to be earned. So everything that we're dodging and don't feel like doing, that's why we have insecurities and lack of confidence.
When it comes to friendships and relationships, what's the most important rule for thriving?
Honest communication and better active listening. Communication is a two-way street. It's not just us talking, listening to understand, making them feel heard, making them feel understood, and sharing your truth. But I would say number one is better listening. Be an active listener. Put your phone down and listen. I have to tell myself that as well sometimes. So let's put the devices down and just be present with the person.
Derek, it's been uh, really good. It's been rich. It's been deep. I think if there's listeners listening today, um, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice to the younger Derek, to maybe it's a young person listening today, what would that advice be?
Become the most disciplined version of yourself you've ever been, and God will handle the rest. Become the most disciplined version of yourself you've ever been, and God will handle the rest. When you do your part, doors open for you, for others. You might even just be the connector and you watch others winning. But life is amazing. I'm getting chills and teary eyes saying that because I've just seen it just with people I work with. Just even if I'm in public and I see stuff happening, it's just when you show up, something is going to happen in a positive way. We just have to do our part.
Derek Johnson, everyone. I really suggest you run out and grab a copy of his book. You want to get in touch with him, you can go to Linktree and then Fit with Derek. That's Linktree, and then Fit with Derek. Get a copy of his book and get in touch with him. If you need help today, like he said, uh, realize that your story could change someone's life. And I think the most important thing, on top of everything we've talked about today, is faith. If you don't have a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, um, then I think anything you're going to search for in life will be a chasing of the wind. And at SwagAbility, and I know it Fit with Derek, um, we can help you figure that one out. Uh, SwagAbility exists to support people with trauma, individuals that are going through illness, disabilities, or family caregivers going through burnout. And you can get in touch with us at swagability.com. That's www.swagability.com, or check out our YouTube channel. And you can do us the greatest honor by subscribing, to help us get our count up and share our channel to someone that could really use it. Until next time, friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, uh, thrive wherever life finds you. Swags out.